What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, May 18th, 2017, and sure happy it's Thursday, sure happy it's Thursday, sure happy it's Thursday. And our phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phones when you call on in. I'm watching our corporate media, and I have to tell you, I have never in my life been as disgusted with the political class of this country as I am right now. We are seeing a slow-motion coup d'etat against the elected President of the United States of America, and they're just piling onto him. They're throwing accusation after accusation. They have absolutely no proof. They're just acting like it's a foregone conclusion that, yes, Donald Trump did this, Donald Trump did that. We're going to have a special counsel. We're going to have this. We're going to have congressional investigations. And it does look like this is the full court press to get rid of a president that was actually elected by the American people and replace him with another obedient puppet. And it is a tragedy to watch, especially for all of us who thought that with Trump's election victory last November, there was a chance to turn this country around and start that long, slow trek back to being a republic with a democratically elected government. And instead, it just seems like the inertia to move forward into war and plundering, and it's continuing pretty much unabated. Paul Craig Roberts is out there talking about the assault on Trump and basically saying we're seeing literally the national security state and the liberal media just going after Donald Trump. It is unprecedented. We have never seen this much propaganda directed at the President of the United States of America by our own government and media. And they're still going on about how Donald Trump leaked classified information to the Russians regarding exploding laptops, which doesn't appear to have happened. All President Trump told the Russians was what was on the TV news. The Russian government has offered the U.S. corporate media a transcript of the actual meeting itself. Corporate media is not interested. We have our story. Don't bother us with the truth. Now, as you know, there's already talk about impeachment for one or the other various crimes. In order for it to work, there have to be Republicans who desert their party. And Laura Ingraham is out there saying that there needs to be political consequences for those GOPers on the Hill who are helping Democrats, with the process of ejecting the elected President of the United States of America. Donald Trump has lashed out, saying this is all a witch hunt, and he's absolutely right. There's no evidence backing up any of this stuff, and it's especially angering and frustrating when you realize how much evidence there was of crimes committed by the Obama administration, in particular, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Former FBI Director James Comey admitted on television that she had, in fact, committed felony violations of Title 18. Then he gave her a get-out-of-jail-free card, which exceeded his authority. So they've appointed a special counsel, former FBI Director Robert Mueller, and on TV everybody's saying, oh, he's absolutely the perfect choice. He's an honorable man. He's a straight guy. I've known him for years. No, there are issues there. Mueller has long connections, deep ties to the deep state. And he helped cover up the pre-9/11 role of the U.S. intelligence agencies and the Bush administration. He helped create the post-9/11 national security surveillance state. And he was part of the propaganda machine getting us into war in Iraq. And he was also, according to WikiLeaks, tangled up with that whole Uranium One deal. Apparently he was part of the negotiating team. He actually delivered a sample of the uranium from the area in the United States to Russia for their analysis to make sure they were actually getting what they thought they were paying for. So it's absurd here. I mean, supposedly Trump has the benefit of being presumed innocent, which is the way this country is supposed to work. We know Comey and Clinton have committed crimes, obstruction of justice among them. But we seem to be operating in a Napoleonic state here. we're just going to assume Donald Trump is guilty, and by golly, it's up to him to prove that he is innocent. And let's not forget Senator Mark Warner, who's out there pounding on this links to Russia, links to Russia, links to Russia. He's a millionaire himself, and he made his fortune in telecommunications, involved with Russian companies, including Yandex. He invested in Russian Yandex, and that's now the most popular web browser in Russia and across Europe, and he's made a small fortune off of them. But nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about the fact that back when Donald Trump was doing business with Russia, we were friends with Russia. And then all of a sudden somebody throws a switch and says, oh, Russia's now our enemy, and anybody who's done business with them, they're bad. David Stockman is out there saying that Russiagate is a colossal Beltway scam. And it is a crock. And it looks like, unfortunately, Donald Trump is losing his fight to be the President of the United States of America because he allowed too many insiders into his White House, not realizing they were not going to be working for him but against him. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our show here as we watch this circus that's unfolding on the corporate media. Even Dennis Kucinich is out there saying this is clearly the deep state, the national security state, out to destroy the Trump presidency. This is an attack from within, not without. And everybody sees that's what's going on. Americans are going to be looking at this and saying, what has our government become to reach this stage where everybody is ignoring the constitutional map for authority in the government? And they've gone rogue. The Pentagon's gone rogue. The NSA went rogue. The CIA went rogue. We have a badly, badly factionalized government. Reuters is out there saying that the Trump campaign had 18 previously undisclosed Russian contacts, and they go on, oh, see, there's a huge... Then further on down in the story, way down, Reuters admits the sources who gave them this information said there was no evidence of wrongdoing or collusion between the campaign and Russia in the communications reviewed so far. In other words, the contacts that were made were just normal business. And various FBI personnel under oath have said all the communications were legitimate, related to business, and then later on related to the transition. But they're trying to create a climate where merely talking to somebody in Russia is a crime. This is already worse than the worst abuses of the McCarthy anti-communist witch hunts. And they're just getting started. Now, Russia is still responding to this story about the highly classified intelligence, and basically their response right now is the American people need to be a little more selective about their reading material, meaning they understand that this is just the corporate media serving their political masters and attacking the president. Now then, getting onto that laptop, something interesting has surfaced. Remember when that whole story began about we're going to ban laptops on certain airlines from the cabin because there's going to be a laptop bomb? And it didn't make sense. There isn't enough room in a laptop to put in enough explosive to have an explosion that would damage the plane. Yeah, it'll wreck the laptop, no question about that. But it turns out what's going on here. The ban is only on certain airlines: Royal Jordanian Airlines, Egypt Air, Turkish Airlines, Saudi Airlines, Kuwait Airways, Royal Air, Maroc, Qatar Airways, Emirates, and Etihad Airways. And all of these airlines have direct flights to the United States, and they pose strong competition to American airline companies, especially during the coming tourist season. And that looks like this is what's really going on here. When the U.S. government bans laptops in the cabin on these airlines, the passengers who want to use their laptops are going to go over to the American Airlines. It's all about profit. There's no real threat. This is just trying to steal customers away from those other airlines by saying you can't have your laptop in the cabin. That's what this is all about, money. Story coming out of Investment Watch blog. David Brock has released a 49-page memo that he acquired that literally lays out the plan to bring down Donald Trump, including plans for impeachment. It is their entire playbook. And the memo contains plans for getting Trump impeached, expanding Media Matters' mission to combat government misinformation, ensuring Democratic control of the Senate in the 2018 elections, and filing dozens of lawsuits against the Trump administration, monetizing political advocacy, using a digital attacker to delegitimize Trump's presidency, damage Republicans, and partnering with Facebook to combat fake news. In other words, censorship. Now, apparently the Democrats are understanding that an attempt to remove Donald Trump might be very politically damaging to them. And they're already running polls saying if we go forward and we impeach Donald Trump and remove him from office, how are you going to feel about it? And apparently the reactions are not the ones the Democrats want to hear. I think if they go forward with this and they take out Donald Trump, they could start a civil war. They could start a civil war. Because they're sending a message to the American people, your vote doesn't matter anymore. Just give us your money, give us your children, and sit down and shut up, and we will decide what we're going to do with it. And that is not the United States of America described in that Constitution. Now, as I said, one of Trump's biggest mistakes going into the White House was keeping all these Obama holdovers, and yes, some of them are protected by civil service. It's very hard to let them go. And allowing his advisors to basically bring in the neocons again. And one of the worst mistakes he made is Johnny DiStefano. And he's the head of personnel and policy for the White House. And he continually blocks Trump's supporters from working in the White House. And he has basically staffed the White House with a whole bunch of never-Trumpers. They've got the president completely corralled. And that's why he can't function. Can't implement any of his changes. And because he's not implementing his changes, to those voters who are not enlightened as to what's really going on behind the scenes, it's looking like he's either reneged on his promises or he's just a failure. 60% of the National Security Council employees were hired by Obama, and under the civil service rules, it is very difficult to fire them. After Trump won the election, Obama basically tried to set up the White House in a condition where Trump was going to just walk into this big old bear trap. And he never knew what hit him. And I said this during the campaign and during the transition. The biggest worry is that Donald Trump is as dangerously naive about the true nature of Washington, D.C. politics and power as badly as Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was blindsided. He came in as an honorable, ethical man. So did Donald Trump. And they just absolutely were not prepared for how corrupt Washington, D.C. is. Jack Welch is now out there saying Trump needs to go to war against the deep state. Jack Welch is the former chief executive of General Electric, and he thinks Donald Trump needs to be more ruthless with that bureaucracy, and yes, I agree. And Welch is saying the same thing that I am. Trump was an entrepreneur. He ran his own shop and his own business. He's never run a bureaucracy before. And he said Trump's biggest mistake was coming into the White House and thinking it would run like another one of his businesses. And we knew that wasn't going to happen. We tried to send a message. It wasn't going to happen. So Donald, or whoever's monitoring this show on his behalf, it's either Donald or the deep state. We're down to the wire here. It's time for some decisive action. You promised us you were going to clean out the swamp. Now's a good time to do it, because the vast majority of Americans are fully on board with this idea of cleaning out that swamp completely, draining it down to the bottom, scraping it out. Now, we posted the actual video from when James Comey was testifying before Congress under oath and says that nobody obstructed the Michael Flynn investigation. It did not happen. It's on tape. He was under oath. And this was 2 months after, supposedly, he wrote down this little memo saying that Donald Trump asked him to back off. So something is obviously wrong with this story. Another story out of Investment Watch blog. The FBI's Napkin Gate, corporate media reaches a new low. And they're still talking about exactly the same thing. 2 months after Comey claims he wrote down this notation that Trump was interfering with the Flynn investigation, he testified under oath, quote, a situation where we were told to stop something for a political reason, that would be a very big deal. It's not happened in my experience. They're making this stuff up. Apparently, Newt Gingrich is saying that Donald Trump needs to close down the press briefing room. And if he wants to communicate with the American people, just do so directly. Presidential press conference, TV speech, Twitter, social media, because the corporate media is clearly adversarial. The corporate media takes everything said in the press briefings and they put it in the worst possible light. And I think that might be a really, really good idea to close that down. Now, not too long ago, there was a gentleman named Peter Dow. He was an advisor to Hillary Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign. And he actually went on out floating the idea on Twitter that because we all know Russia interfered with the election, that the only just thing to do is to throw out Donald Trump and just make Hillary the president. And, of course, he got called on that because the Constitution has a very specific procedure. If Donald Trump is impeached or otherwise not available to do his job, Mike Pence will become the president. But clearly, this is what they're thinking. They're trying to think of a way where they can go to the Supreme Court or they can have a special ruling or whatever to get Hillary back in. She actually, apparently, still thinks she can get that White House. She just has to cheat her way to it. And interestingly enough, Mike Pence has started his own PAC, the Great America Committee. And this is the first time ever a sitting vice president has formed a separate political operation. And supposedly, according to NBC News, this PAC will provide resources for the vice president to actually support candidates who are supportive of the president's agenda. I'm not entirely sure, because Mike Pence may be realizing that he could be up for the presidency and he might face opposition from Hillary's people. So, now, getting on back to Mike Flynn, apparently the Senate wants to subpoena him for the Intelligence Committee, and Mike Flynn, at this point, is refusing. And apparently for some of the other people who were subpoenaed, the sticking point is that they're refusing to basically look into what happened with the Obama spying on them. They feel the two issues are linked. And they feel the Senate Intelligence Committee is being extraordinarily selective in terms of what they're looking at and what they're not looking at. And yes, they are. We saw Hillary Clinton and Obama and all these other people just get a walk on some very obvious provable crimes, and now they're trying to destroy Donald Trump with these fairy tales. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And in another very disappointing development, the word coming out of the White House is that apparently Joe Lieberman is now being considered as the new head of the FBI. And that, of course, is a national disgrace. Lieberman would continue the cover-ups of the national security state, the cocaine smuggling, the assassinations, and then he would unleash the FBI on everyone who was critical of Israel in any way. This is an absolute unmitigated disaster. Meanwhile, officialdom is continuing to turn a blind eye, as it were, to the new revelations regarding Seth Rich. And a lot of information is now coming out about that. And by the way, if you're having trouble getting to the What Really Happened website, yes, it's under heavy hacker attack right now. Spoiled children are back. So basically, more and more people are saying, yeah, Seth Rich looks like a candidate for the dead bodies list. Actually, he did right when he was killed, and we did put him on that list. But the government is sticking with the official story. It was a botched robbery. We don't need to look anymore. Now, yesterday, we broke the story. Somebody leaked the incident report of the shooting. And what it told us was that Seth Rich was still alive, breathing and conscious when the police got there, and that he died later at the hospital. And whatever it was, he told the police officers is unavailable because the videos from their body cameras have disappeared. And now it gets even more interesting because one of the doctors who worked in that hospital, trying to stay anonymous, unfortunately I think he's given away too many clues as to who he is, but basically said Seth Rich had 3 total gunshot wounds, an entry and an exit, and a second entry, and that in his experience these wounds were not lethal. He was shot in the gut, one in the liver and one into the intestine. And they resected part of the bowel. That fixed that problem. And they cleaned up the liver and basically said that there was every expectation he was going to pull through. And then all of a sudden, law enforcement just swarm in and they kick everybody else out of the room. And by the time they let the doctor back in, Seth Rich was just about to pass away. So it was technically attended by a doctor, but we don't know what's going on. That's a very revealing story. Yeah, this was a hit. All right, let's see. Going to take a phone call. Brendan in San Francisco, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
On the Seth Rich matter, I heard that neighbors were volunteering that lights were removed from the street where that... I'm going to call it a murder, assassination occurred, and that's not being really widely reported, but there's some pretty good confirmation that a crew went in there and removed street lights, which would have aided in the, covertness of that hit. I called in because I saw a on-the-street interview with people in Austin, Texas, where no one has even heard of Seth Rich. And these are people that are somewhat informed. The reporter went around and asked, have you heard about Russian hacking? And everyone said, oh, yeah, they heard about that. And they said, have you heard of a DNC staffer that was killed named Seth Rich? And every single one of them was like, no, I haven't heard of that. Somewhat familiar, but 90% had no idea. So we're losing this war on information. I'm seeing cognitive dissonance in my own family and friends. Either they can't be bothered or they don't want to know. Ignorance is bliss. Mm-hmm. And with that, all I can say is we need to start looking at joining our state militias or oath keepers, because from what I'm hearing, there's going to be a summer of violence that's going to be could be on par with the LA riots.
Oh boy, I would really not want to see that. Of course, at my age, I'm nobody's idea of any kind of a freedom fighter, but I'd really like to find a way to avoid that. But at this point, I think it's inescapable, and we just have to accept that. Brendan, we're going to let you go. Take a break for commercials. We'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome to our show. We're going to take a few more phone calls. Errol in the Netherlands, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I wrote something down. Can I say it very quickly?
Yes.
It's a lyric. writing lyrics.
Okay.
It goes like this. Okay, it goes like this. The ego, the fullness, and the hopelessness at the end. The future for us will be on demand. A system that will not lie to its own hands and make the future demand.
Okay.
It was a lyric I wrote like half an hour ago. I hope you like it.
I do.
Thank you for taking my call.
You got it. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Jim in Chicago. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Even though I do not support Donald Trump, but I don't feel sorry for him because he's extremely naive. He surrounds himself with a bunch of neocons and family members who are like amateurs who I wouldn't even trust. So I don't have anyone to blame. I don't feel sorry because it's his own fault.
Yeah, he's made a lot of very, very critical mistakes, but again, my efforts last year were not so much about supporting Trump as opposing Hillary Clinton. And if they hadn't stolen the nomination away from Bernie Sanders, I probably would have supported him over Trump.
Well, I would agree with you. But, you just mentioned about Lieberman. What are they thinking?
They're consolidating power. They're
Well, I guarantee you, by the end of the summer, if things don't change, the neocons have taken over.
I think the neocons have already taken over. My concern is by the end of the summer, we're going to have rioting and civil war and revolution in the streets of America. And that was something I worked very, very hard to prevent from happening. And I have to add that to my list of failed agendas.
Well, again, hopefully that won't happen this summer because we have enough problems. But in the meantime, nothing's being done as far as the economy, as far as what's going on overseas. Everything is at a standstill.
Well, because Trump is totally taken up with all these attacks coming in from the never-Trumpers. There's only so many hours in the day, and there's only one Donald Trump. And, yeah, while he's tangled up with all of this nonsense, he can't function as a president. And for that matter, the entire U.S. Congress, when they're tangled up with this nonsense, they can't do their job either. This is allowing the country to run rudderless for the sake of political game playing. And again, Donald Trump hasn't actually done anything. Even Maxine Waters, when she was being interviewed by Wolf Blitzer, said there isn't actually any evidence of the Trump-Russia collusion, and Wolf Blitzer just cut her right on off. They're not interested in the facts. It's just the fangs are out. They want him. Because Trump made the corporate media look bad, he made the Democrats look bad, and they're just out for blood. It's petty vindictiveness.
Michael, give me a prediction. What do you think is going to happen 2 to 3 years from now?
We're on the verge of a major economic collapse. They're escalating the wars, and I think if we get into that war, we're going to lose. We're already losing in all these other countries, and they're already talking about escalating, sending more troops and weapons in to try and regain the initiative in like Afghanistan, and now we're overtly bombing Assad's forces in Syria. So that's now technically a state of war that's been declared in that country without Congress.
Okay, well, thank you very much. You take care.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. All right, John, somewhere on the West Coast, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I don't know if there's any aloha spirit left in this world anymore. Me being a former veteran, a Navy veteran, and I'm disgusted. Today is a very low point for me when I just read the article on what really happened. U.S. coalition jets strike Assad convoy in southern Syria. Now, the United States is now officially ISIS's air force. I'd like to meet this Navy pilot, me being a Navy man myself, face to face, and just ask him how he feels about being lower than the Luftwaffe Air Force during World War II member. I mean, this is really disgusting. I don't know what else. My stomach is turning. I'm so angry. I hope whoever is responsible for this mess, for dragging this nation into levels of lower than macrophage, rot in hell and catch the worst karma that any human can endure in his lifetime. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Well, you're very, very welcome, and I understand exactly how you feel, because odd that you would pick up the Luftwaffe, because more and more the United States is acting like the Fourth Reich. We have concentration camps, they're using torture on people, high-tech whiz-bang weapons, lies to start wars. The only real difference I can see right now is the Nazis had cooler-looking uniforms, and that's about it. All right, we're going to go to Kurt in Alberta. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello?
You're on the air.
Thought it went dead. Hi. Yeah, I'm just phoning about the Russian hacking, you know, and the EU. Russia hacked the EU. Strange how they only hack when it goes against their favor and stuff. And
yeah.
And the other part is, you know, the rest of the world is starting to look at the States as the biggest joke out there for your,
well, not just as the biggest joke. I mean, they're taking polls around the world, and right now the world's population sees the United States as the biggest threat to world peace. They do not see us as a moral leader. They see us as a new aggressive colonialist empire, and certainly by the actions of the U.S. government, they're justified in believing that.
Oh yeah, and like the FBI, if they haven't got something on Trump by now, I mean, God, give me a break. That this has to keep going on. I mean, the FBI is turning into one of the biggest jokes if they haven't got this.
Well, they kind of have been all along. You need to stop watching TV shows and movies about the FBI because that's not what they're like. And if you really want to find out what the FBI has been like all along, you need to go back and read the history of COINTELPRO. This was an acronym that stood for Counterintelligence Program back in the 1960s. What it actually was the FBI going on out and themselves committing criminal acts to undermine free speech in the country. Their biggest target was opposition to the war in Vietnam, and they did everything they could to sabotage the anti-war movement, including staging that bogus riot at Disneyland. Their next target after that was the civil rights movement, trying to undermine that, trying to bring down Martin Luther King, which they eventually did. They even went after the early feminists, the Native Americans, and this is what the FBI was really doing. And then in the 1970s, some very brave individuals actually broke into an FBI field office, got the files, and released them to the media. And it was a huge stink. And Congress had to hold hearings because the actions of the FBI brought the government to the edge of delegitimization in the eyes of the American people. So Congress harumphed and humphed, and nobody really got punished for it. And they passed a bunch of laws saying the FBI can't do this sort of thing anymore. And then those laws were all repealed under President Bill Clinton.
Oh, yeah, no, I know most of that history. I've read it in different places, but, I mean, just how everything is going there. Like, as a president, I've never seen people attack somebody so much. I mean, it's incredible. I mean,
I have to wonder, do they not understand what this all looks like to the American people outside the Beltway? This is not good for the public image of the U.S. government, or for that matter, the United States as a whole. They look like a bunch of it looks like a giant daycare center, and the kids are just screaming at each other. That's how they're behaving.
Yeah, and the rest of the world is probably getting together behind the United States back and saying, how do we move around them and try and get the world to function without them anymore? So, I mean, the imperialism of the United States is fading, and I mean, the rest of the world has just had enough of it for the most part. We're tired of them going into everybody's country and starting a war.
Yeah, they are, but unfortunately the imperialism aspect is actually on the rise. That's what all these wars are about, is reasserting the American empire across the globe. And sooner or later, we're going to go up against countries that have significant military assets. Right now, the United States is looking very butch because they go on in with their military might to countries that really don't have a very strong military at all. And, of course, they're easy to just steamroller over. But the U.S. is running out of weak and helpless countries to push around. Countries like North Korea are arming themselves with nuclear weapons to deter invasion. And ultimately, we're looking at Russia and China and Iran forming a bloc to oppose the United States. And those countries really do have nuclear weapons, and they really do have the missiles that'll put them on the target in the American heartland. And that apparently is something, according to Paul Craig Roberts, the thinking inside the U.S. government right now is they're going to do a first strike on Russia, and it'll be so horrible that Russia will dare not retaliate out of fear of a second strike. And that's a heck of a gamble to be taking.
Well, they forgot about all the subs with probably just outside your coast with nuclear weapons on it that can strike at any time, and you know, and if they ever strike somebody like Russia or China or anybody with power, I mean, every ship that the United States has in the ocean will be sunk within the first couple days with missiles.
Yeah.
I mean, navies are an obsolete part of a war. They just look good when you go against small countries.
Yeah, I've been hearing that from a lot of people. The United States has been investing a lot of money in improving on the weapons that won World War II, and other countries like Russia and China have been thinking outside the box, and they're coming up with certainly Russia's electronic warfare capability is absolutely stunning, and both Russia and China have come up with very fast torpedoes, very fast sea-skimming missiles that can evade the close-in weapon system, and they're literally designed to hunt down and kill the aircraft carriers.
Yeah, and if civilians like us can figure that out, I mean, what's the military thinking? I mean, it's like going to France where they built all those things to keep the Germans out for World War II, and they just went around them.
The Maginot Line.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I mean, the military thinking of the United States has to be so backdated or
it's always been that way. It's always been. If you go through any of the academies like West Point, you're basically taught military history and how great it was and how wonderful it worked, and there isn't as much focus on actually looking forward as there are in these other countries. And I remember, I think it was about 2 years ago, there was a story that came on out where the Joint Chiefs called in one of the top Navy admirals and said, if we were to go to war against Russia, what is the life expectancy of our carrier battle groups? And this admiral said, maybe 2 weeks, 3 if you keep them in port, which was not the answer that they wanted to hear. But again, look at the Gerald R. Ford. They're not even sure that will ever really be usable in actual combat. Certainly looks good in a museum. And we've been hearing all these horror stories about the F-35, the F-22, and so forth. These weapons are actually being deployed now, and they're not even complete.
Yeah. The only hopeful thing is enough military people have enough and say enough's enough. And well,
that's starting to actually happen down in Venezuela. Not among the military, but among the police are now on the side of the people. And so, yeah, there's a breaking point where everybody says this has gone on long enough. And if something doesn't happen to change the course of the United States of America, we're going to be in a real shooting world war, and this country is going to lose it, in my estimation.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to take more than a couple of weeks before it to end either.
Well, remember Tom Lehrer and his songs for World War III, you know, I'll be back in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no war. I mean, almost every country has a military. They build planes, they do all these things, but when you come up against superpowers, all you're doing is flying missiles at everybody for the first week and destroying all the infrastructure. So. And then there's nothing left. But
well,
I mean,
again, look at Trump's cruise missile attack into Syria. Most of those cruise missiles missed their target. And apparently people on the ground up in Afghanistan are saying that Moab bomb was not the big blast it was advertised to be. It appears to have fizzled. Maybe there were cracks in the explosive filler, or who knows what was going on. But again, they look impressive. They're very expensive. They don't really seem to work all that well. And it is very reckless to be talking about war with Russia and China when the weapons you have were very profitable for the military-industrial complex, but actually not really very good in actual combat. Anyway, Kurt, we're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to Sherry in Fredericksburg. Sherry, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I think imperialism may become difficult now if this hacking thing keeps up. There's this corporate desperation right now, and hacking could be the final upset, because people may have to use their cash if debit cards start failing.
Yes.
When they go to the grocery store and everything, and they aren't going to work. iPhones, AT&T has some abuses going on here. They're becoming unpopular. Starbucks, people with cards to swipe couldn't get any Starbucks, but if you had the cash, I guess you could.
Yes.
America's downfall may be upon us now due to the greed and desperation and all this and the advertising. And more people, because advertising is why they hit us so much online, you know, and that's why we're being surveillanced so much. It's supposed to be because of advertising, but it's also because they want to have this one world government and everything. And we're more vulnerable the more they know about us. Well, people may want to start moving over to our side, because especially since they have so much to lose, this could be very immobilizing for the bad guys and maybe less bad for us, because we don't have millions of dollars to lose and big businesses and everything. So what do you call it? Imperialism? You say it's fading. Yeah, it could collapse if the
it could collapse. It could collapse. It's a very fragile system, which is why it is insane for them to push for a cashless society, knowing how those transaction systems are broken. Got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Let's grab a couple more phone calls. Then we're going to close the lines because I got a bunch of news I need to do here. Coming up right now is International Rabbit from France. And aloha, bonjour. And what is on your mind today?
Bonjour from France. I just want to check with you to see if my eyes are playing tricks on me.
How so?
Is Lieberman, is he the front runner for FBI director?
That's what we're hearing. That's what we're hearing. I mean, we were hoping it was going to be Trey Gowdy. Trey Gowdy's bowed out, and apparently most of the other people have decided they don't want the job. And so it's really kind of Joe Lieberman is pretty much the only one still in the running. And that will be a disaster for the American people.
Holy cow. Okay, one more thing. I lived in Russia for 8 years teaching English, and I've been all over the western half of it. I've got some news hounds there. One of them in St. Petersburg just called me and told me that as of today, the Ukrainian borders are going to be open on June 10th. They'll have open borders according to the Schengen Treaty.
Well, they'll be open to Europe, not to Russia.
Right. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I've been hearing about that. They're already talking about visa-free travel from Ukraine to Europe. They're trying to bring Ukraine into the European Union. Unfortunately, it's not the sweet deal that it was back when they were approaching Yushchenko, because Ukraine is just crumbling under the war debt, and the wars have destroyed much of Ukraine's commercial infrastructure. A lot of the factories are no longer working. A lot of the agriculture has been disrupted. So Ukraine is probably going to be more drained than benefit on the European Union. But it looks good on a map that, hey, we're grabbing another chunk away from those gosh darn Ruskies.
Could it also be easier access for immigrants?
Yeah, absolutely it will be.
Well, I think that's the plan.
Could very well be. All right, well, thank you very much, Rabbit. We're going to let you go and switch to David in Southern California. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for taking my call. Thank you for being my daily dose of reason and rational thought. I got a sister in Kailua who I'm trying to turn into a fan.
Okay, good.
One question that's been on my mind Is not the 59 Tomahawks into Syria just a retaliatory strike at the behest of Israel for downing their jet the week before?
It may have been, and it may have been Donald Trump trying to show that he was, going to be tough on Syria, and the same thing with Afghanistan with the Moab bomb. Blowing up those underground facilities, which the CIA had actually built back during when they were getting the Soviet Union out of there. So either way, it was a pointless gesture. The airfield was back in operation in less than 24 hours, and it showed to the world that these Tomahawks are actually, they don't hit their targets all the time. And we're starting to see this myth of military invincibility start to crumble and crack a little bit. Anyway, David, we're going to let you go. We're going to take a break for station identification. We're going to close the phone lines, and I'm going to do some news when we get back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here in hour number 2. The phone lines are closed for the moment, and I want to get some news out of here. Now, Judicial Watch is continuing to do some excellent, excellent work, and they have obtained new records that reveal that the Obama Department of Justice was planning to seek criminal charges against Obama's opponents. And it wasn't just the Department of Justice, it was the IRS, that whole Lois Lerner thing, and the FBI. They were all being turned into weapons to be used against political targets. And that obviously is a tacky no-no under our system of government, except we have a government that just institutionally no longer feels they have to play by the rules. It's whoever's got the power, whoever has the blackmail information, whoever's got the leverage, whoever's got the money, calling the shots. The federal government is visibly fracturing before our eyes. Now, we mentioned this earlier, but we're going to mention it again. It's coming out of Blacklisted News. Apparently, National Security Agency Director Admiral Mike Rogers is seizing on this idea that Russia hacked our elections in order to argue that the intelligence agencies, the national security state, the spooks, should have direct oversight of our elections. In other words, if you think the vote rigging was bad before, this is it. We will never have another democratically elected president in this country. It'll be whoever is selected by the spook agencies to be the figurehead. And again, just like this whole idea of Russian collusion with the Trump campaign, there is no evidence that Russia interfered with our election. Nobody has found any evidence. The entire argument is, well, obviously they wanted Trump to win, so it makes sense that they did something. Go ahead and prove you're innocent. Return to Code Napoleon. You're guilty until you can prove you're innocent. And that's not how the United States is supposed to be set up. And I would like to remind everybody one more time that all of the election fraud that was detected last year all favored Hillary Clinton. Now, if you've been watching corporate media, especially Fox News, you've probably heard that Fox News former chief Roger Ailes has died at age 77. He basically resigned last summer, supposedly over accusations of sexual harassment, and he basically created the Fox News network and wrote it up there. But ever since Rupert Murdoch has taken it back, it's definitely moving away from the conservative. At this point, it's centrist, and I don't see the momentum stopping. I think Fox News is going to be just as liberal, war hawk, get Trump, as the rest of the corporate media out there. Turning to the war zones here, the U.S.-backed rebels have suffered a major setback. Syrian army troops have captured much of eastern Sweden, and that may be why the U.S. bombed the Syrian forces today. The Syrian Arab Army, alongside the National Defense Forces, resumed their offensive operations in the eastern countryside of al-Swida on today. And they apparently managed to capture 35 kilometers of rebel-held territory and doing great guns. So this may have been the reason the United States bombed a Syrian military convoy. And they're not even trying to pretend it was another accident like they've done before. The U.S. and the coalition have carried out something like 8,000 airstrikes into Syria. Oh, we're going after ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Sorry about the hospital. Didn't mean to, really. But now they're saying basically because the Syrian forces moved against the U.S.-backed forces in Syria, that the U.S. was entitled or right to attack Syria's forces. So now we're in direct conflict with Syria's government forces. It's got nothing to do with ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And as that caller mentioned, basically the United States is now ISIS Air Force. And we do have boots on the ground in Syria as well. It's only a matter of time before we go up head-to-head against the Russians. That's where this is going. Russia will not allow the United States to basically conquer Syria. Meanwhile, thousands of Hezbollah forces deployed at Al-Tanf to foil the U.S. plot in Syria. Now, as you know, the U.S. put some 3,000 forces in Al-Tanf to create a security buffer zone where the U.S.-backed rebels could hide out in safety and basically say, go attack, come on back. If Syria comes into the buffer zone, we'll drive them away. And apparently the Hezbollah forces are being a major headache to that. They don't want any safety buffer zones. They realize it's the first step to the balkanization of Syria to create the new Kurdistan. We're going to do a quick shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. We're talking about the war zones. And once again, there is the use of poison gas in the war zones. Apparently, ISIL is now using poison gas to slow the advance of Iraq's troops in Mosul. Where's the hue and cry from the media? Oh, when they thought it was Assad at Idlib, oh, it was front page news. Nope, hardly a mention here. And of course the question is, where did they get these chemical weapons? They're not exactly easy to make. You can't go down to the longs and pick up a few chemicals and mix something. Trump's advisors now want at least 50,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan. They are not able to get that country under control. They have the oil pipeline right-of-way under control. They have the opium poppies under control. But the Taliban is still actually de facto in charge of much of that country, especially toward the east. So they're having to escalate in there. They've gotten into these messes they can't get out. And this is what happened to the Soviet Union. They got caught in a war of attrition in Afghanistan, and it just ground them down until finally, as part of perestroika, the Soviet Union pulled them out of Afghanistan. And that was the end of the Soviets' myth of military invincibility. And all of the socialist republics started breaking away. And that was the end of the Soviet Union and the beginning of the Russian republics. Now, here's a very cautioning article from commondreams.org. The U.S. will never win the war in Afghanistan. Remember, the last military commander who actually succeeded in conquering all of Afghanistan and hanging on to it was Alexander the Great, and he only kept it for 3 years. So this article is basically saying the U.S. is pouring your tax money into a corrupt sewer. The World Justice Project's 2016 Rule of Law Index ranked Afghanistan 111 out of 113 countries assessed, meaning there are only 2 more countries more corrupt than Afghanistan. The money is pouring on in, and it vanishes into people's private account. And despite all the U.S. arms, aid, and training, its divided and demoralized security forces are unable to stand up to the Taliban. Remember, Afghanistan is called the graveyard of empires. Certainly was true in the case of the Soviet Union, certainly true in the case of Great Britain, and it looks like it could very well be true for the United States of America. Now, down in the Gulf area, the Gulf states are looking at what Israel is doing, its belligerence, its aggressiveness, and they've offered to come up with a solution. They're willing to make a deal. The Gulf states are saying to Israel they will normalize ties, encourage trade, travel, let's all be friends in exchange for a partial freeze on the building of illegal settlements, which sounds like a really, really good deal. And along with the freezing the settlement construction in parts of the West Bank, also involves easing trade restrictions in the Gaza Strip. Sounds very good to me. Sounds fair. It sounds just. It sounds practical, which is why Israel's never going to go for it. Meanwhile, over in the Negev, Israel has raised a Palestinian village for the 113th time. And basically, they keep going on into this village, Arakib. They'll bulldoze it flat. They'll leave. The Palestinians will come back and rebuild. They've been through this 113 times. And basically, they're shacks, so it's easy to put them back up again. But that's what's going on. Now, here is a warning sign about what's going to happen in South America. And when I read this story, I flashed back to the movie Avatar, where our hero in the wheelchair is just starting to get to know his commanding officer. And the commanding officer says, I saw your record. You were in Venezuela. That was some mean bush. And you start to wonder, wow, Cameron knew what was happening here. We know that Venezuela has been the target of U.S. covert action, going all the way back to Hugo Chavez. They tried to get a coup to get him out of power. Actually got him out of office for about a week, I think. Heavy economic warfare, all over the fact that Venezuela wants to sell their oil for currencies other than the U.S. dollar. They've been selling much of their oil to China for the yuan. And even worse, under Hugo Chavez, they took all that oil money and they spent it on the people of the country. Horror of horrors. That's a bad example for all the other countries. So they've been wanting to get Venezuela under control. And as you know, there's rioting going on down there. Looks like another color revolution, destabilization. And now, here we go. The United States has gone into the UN Security Council saying the Venezuela crisis has reached the point where an intervention is needed to prevent a new Syria. And Nikki Haley's over there saying that the U.S. intention wasn't to be intrusive or heavy-handed, which is what they said when they were going in, but to support regional efforts to find a political solution, meaning they're going to find somebody who'll do what they're told and put them into power. So yeah, Venezuela is now going to be getting the Americanization treatment. Story out of FFF.org. The Batinsky should butt out of Korea. And we're hearing all this talk about nuclear weapons and missiles, and again, looking at the U.S. aggressions over the last, going on 20 years, and covertly before that, since the end of World War II. The U.S. has tried to covertly change the government of some 50 countries, and they've succeeded about half the time. Korea was something that we never should have gotten involved in the first place because it was a civil war. And the U.S. has kept a force of 23,000 American soldiers stationed in South Korea, ever since. And this Korean Civil War is a half-century old. I hope that South Korea's new president is able to carry through with his promise to reach across the DMZ and shake Kim Jong-un's hand and say, let's stop all this nonsense. Let's officially end the Korean War and talk about reunification. The U.S. doesn't want that, though. Meanwhile, and this is something we need to keep an eye on, Russia is stepping up to help North Korea in order to constrain the United States. Now, as you know, the United States has been throwing sanctions all over North Korea, and even China has gone along with some of these, you know, to punish North Korea for building weapons that would prevent us from invading whenever we feel like it. And Russia is now increasing fuel exports to North Korea and filling in the supply gap created by China halting trade. So Russia is stepping on in And that means that North Korea is going to be very friendly with Russia, as opposed to the United States. And emphasizing this new closeness, a tourist ferry has just opened between North Korea and Russia's Vladivostok. And it's already had its one crossing to sort of inaugurate the service, and they had representatives of Chinese and Russian tourism companies. And they're going to start regular service next week. Passenger connection between the two countries. That's how it's supposed to be done. Peace through commerce, cooperation. Let's be friends and do business. Let's just wag our missiles at each other and force them to buy things they don't want to buy. Now, another issue here is apparently a company called SRE Minerals has announced the discovery in North Korea of what is believed to be the largest deposit of rare earth elements anywhere in the world. And that right there is a good reason for an invasion, because those rare earth elements are critical to the manufacture of modern electronics. And they're not that common. A lot of them are in China. China right now has an almost monopolistic control on the rare earth elements. So if the U.S. were to invade North Korea and capture that deposit, then obviously more of those rare earth elements would be available to U.S. corporations at a lower price. But that's a real prize right there, those rare earth elements. Now, if you're my age, you remember the Cuban Missile Crisis. And it was precipitated when the United States put nuclear-tipped long-range missiles in Turkey to threaten the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union responded by placing missiles on the island of Cuba, also nuclear, also long-range. And it led to a standoff between Khrushchev and Kennedy that brought us to the brink of a nuclear exchange with the Soviet Union. Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed. Kennedy and Khrushchev knew for a fact that their counterpart did not want to push that button, and they were able to avoid making that big mistake. And Khrushchev took the missiles out of Cuba. The U.S. pulled some, not all of their missiles, out of Turkey. And Kennedy promised Khrushchev there would be no more invasions of Cuba. This was after the Bay of Pigs fiasco. So there's another article out here from Sputnik News saying we're on the verge of the American missile crisis because the U.S. is planting missiles all over the world. THAAD, along with the existing strategic forces, the submarines, and the rest of it, there's a new missile crisis coming, and it's being created by the military-industrial complex, because the more they can convince the government to put missiles in other countries, the more missiles will have to be bought and manufactured. And now we're in a situation where the leaders of other countries aren't really certain about the sanity of our political leadership. There are too many of them out there saying, yeah, let's just go ahead and nuke Russia and get it over with. Again, coming from Paul Craig Roberts. This is a very, very, very dangerous time, and the future of all humanity, unfortunately, is in the hands of whichever world leader is the least mentally stable. And with the possible exception of Vladimir Putin, pretty much all of them would look much better in a straitjacket, as far as I can tell. Okay, article here. This is coming out of Global Research. Armed drones, America's favorite weapon, blurring the line between warfare and assassination. And yes, that has been a problem, because the U.S. has a bad habit of sending these drones into countries with which we are not actually at war, countries that have not done anything to us, and they blow people up. And they have not been very careful about picking their targets. They profile extremely tall men. They're likely to be part of the terrorist group, and that led to a tragedy. Because one of the drones saw this crowd of people in the street, and there was one tall figure in the middle, and they figured, oh, gotta be a terrorist. And they struck the crowd, and it turned out to be a school class with their teacher. And they were all blown to bloody bits. So there is an area of concern. Are these, in fact, war crimes being committed? The United States, under international law, does not actually have a right to fly drones into other people's countries and kill people. They're able to do it, and from that they're going to say, well, if we can, then we will, and nobody can stop us. But you need to look at the morality of that. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to talk about the economy now. As you know, the stock markets took a major hit yesterday. They blamed it all on the uncertainty over Donald Trump. And the markets climbed back a little bit today. Middle of the day, it looked like they were going to go back up, and then toward the end of the day, slid back off again. I think people are really starting to look about where their investments are and whether they should go on following the cheerleaders with the flag saying the economy is really good, or if it's time for an honest assessment of what their investments really are worth when they look at the numbers for themselves here. Interestingly enough, over in Italy, Deutsche Bank is being sued for running a, quote, international criminal organization. And apparently they've been accused and found guilty of rigging and manipulating virtually every possible asset class. And so it was inevitable that Deutsche Bank, which is already on trial in Milan for helping Banca Monte dei Paschi conceal losses, that happened last October, and now they're facing accusations it was actually running an international criminal organization, committing all this fraud. Yeah, sounds like it to me. Now, over in Greece, things are really, really bad. The Greek people are absolutely opposed to any more austerity, which is the people make do with less so the bankers can have more. And apparently the protesters are being joined by the police, fire brigades, and even the Coast Guard. And the only ones who are still trying to protect the Greek parliament are the special riot police units. So we could see something dramatic happen there very, very quickly. All right, let's see. We're going to grab ourselves a phone call. Glenn in Philadelphia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. The Pentagon has consented to accept the return of the THAAD missile systems from South Korea, but they have to charge a 15% restocking fee, and they'll have to be sold as refurbs. Those interested in pricing and availability information can find it at www.missilesrus.com.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny. So they are taking the THAAD out of South Korea.
No,
you just made that up. Okay. Well, because the new South Korean president wants the U.S. to pull all their troops and weapons and everything out. He's saying we can take care of our own defense. We're going to make friends with North Korea. We don't need all this stuff here. And so that's going to be very, very awkward for the United States, which is openly hostile to North Korea, to all of a sudden start being openly hostile to South Korea, because South Korea doesn't want to go along with the war agenda. But if South Korea is pulling out of that, the U.S. doesn't really have any kind of a justification for being over there.
Right. Well, isn't that what Jesus said? Curse those blasted peacemakers, or something like that.
I think it was blessed be the cheesemakers.
Blessed are the peacemakers. Yeah. It's always that fine print always gets you.
Yes.
You know? All right, Mike. That's all I had. Take care.
All right. Thanks an awful lot here. And yes, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, apparently, there's been a bit of a whoopsie over in China, just by way of sharing the fact that bankers are going to behave like bankers anywhere in the world. And apparently at China's Mingsheng Bank, the country's largest private bank, apparently lost 3 trillion yuan. Basically, it turned out bank employees had engaged in fraud and embezzled the funds. They never invested the money. They had basically put the money into cultural relics and jewelry for their own use. So there's a big stink brewing over there. Everywhere in the world you go, the bankers are going to be the bankers are going to be the bankers. Meanwhile, over in California, Governor Jerry Brown is slamming taxpayers as being freeloaders because they're against higher taxation. What's wrong with you? You should love your higher taxes. We're all taxed way too much, and the money does not come back to benefit us. It goes to the war machine, goes to the refugees, the illegal immigrants, Israel. It doesn't come back to us, and that is a major problem. We'll be right back after these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones here. Kathleen in Paris, thank you for waiting so patiently, and what is on your mind?
Kathleen in Paris, thank you for waiting. What is on your mind? Kathleen in Paris, thank you for waiting.
Okay, we seem to have an echo. Please turn down the speaker on your computer.
Yeah.
You're there. Okay, good.
Yeah, I did. I just did that. Two things, Michael. You already spoke about the White House personnel director. What's his name?
I'd have to go
anyway,
back. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at that.
But never mind. He's filling the White House with bad people. But in 4 days, supposedly in 4 days, I read somewhere that I can't quote, but on the 22nd, he's planning a major purge of Trump supporters.
Yeah, they were brought in during the transition, and they have very limited contracts, and the contracts are expiring. This director of personnel has the option to renew them, and apparently he's not going to. He's literally trying to get the White House purged of anybody who might actually be on Donald Trump's side. Trump's got to be feeling like a very lonely man right now. He's surrounded on all sides by people who are enemies of him. And that, again, he's made so many mistakes, and at this point it may be irretrievable.
The other thing is I have an article by Wayne Madsen. He's got this Strategic Culture Foundation, and I subscribe to that. And it's about Macron, the new president, and he's calling him an American Trojan horse in the Elysee Palace. It took me many years to be able to say that, so I hope you can appreciate the Elysee Palace. Anyway, that when Macron was in the ministry of the President Hollande, that he was instrumental in American companies taking over French companies, French industry and whatnot. So it's like the globalization thing, right?
Yes. Well, again, what the globalists want is to partition the earth into these various regions, and each region is responsible for one area of economic activity. All the farming will be over here, all the electronics will be over here, all the cars will be over here, all the clothing manufacturing over here, with the idea that the globe is now dependent on the rest of the globe. And that is going to be an impediment to nations going back to being sovereign nations. Now, because of all the sanctioning activity that's been going on, especially up in Russia, is they're redeveloping their ability to take care of their economic needs internally, domestically. And they're bringing back industries that have been allowed to fade away because of offshoring. And we should be doing the same thing here in the United States, but unfortunately the H-1Bs and the offshoring are continuing. Because they're trying to basically drive all of electronics into India and China, and I don't know what they're planning on having the U.S. being. It certainly isn't going to be the breadbasket to the world that it was back in the 1960s, because nobody wants our GMO agriculture.
Right. Well, yes, I just thought I would throw in 2 cents about the French president. Being on board with globalization. And
well, I mean, look how overt they were in stealing the election from Marine Le Pen. It's almost like we've reached a point where they're not even really trying to hide it. It'll just be there in your face, and this is just the new reality. You're all required to vote, but it doesn't really mean anything.
I saw a video where somebody against Marine Le Pen. I don't know, I don't vote here, so I don't know quite how it works, but evidently you go into the voting place and there's ballots there, and if you want to vote for Le Pen, there's a stack of ballots for Le Pen, and you pick one up and go. And there was a video of some guy just grabbing all of them and taking them out,
yes.
so nobody could vote for Le Pen.
Yes, yeah. And there was the postal ballots, because under French law, a ballot that is torn is considered spoiled and cannot be counted. And apparently, French voters who were voting by mail, they would get the envelope from the polling place, and Macron's ballot was perfectly intact, and the ones for Marine Le Pen, they were all torn. And there were like tens of thousands of these spoiled ballots sent on out, and the number of spoiled ballots actually exceeded the number of votes that Marine Le Pen actually received. Clearly, that could have shifted the election right there. But we've started seeing the emergence of massive election fraud all across the globe. Scottish independence referendum, a lot of election fraud in Brexit, didn't quite get where they wanted to go. A lot of election fraud in this country last year. They didn't get where they wanted to go, and maybe that's why the NSA and CIA now want to take more direct control of the election system, because by golly, when we rig an election, it stays rigged.
I'm pretty dismayed, and, I live here for many years. I'm an English teacher. I have a lot of French friends, and I don't know one who is awake. They, they're all like, oh, Macron, he's going to save us now.
Yeah,
well. Like, we thought. And it's very depressing.
It is, and I hope your friends will start to wake up, because if the United States succeeds in getting into a war with Russia, part of it is going to be fought on your land again. Just like World War I, just like World War II.
Yes. Yes, I have some who are awake and listening to me, but some who, I'm in danger of losing the friendship.
Well, there's a lot of people who are, they're still in denial. They start to think about what might be happening, and it's so scary, they just shut off and say, I don't want to know. I'm going to be, I'm just going to mind my own business, and the world will leave me alone, and unfortunately it never works out that way. Okay?
Yes, they quote Voltaire to me, that we should just tend our own garden,
Well, yeah, until the tank rolls over it. All right, well, Kathleen, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Getting on back to the economy, Ellen Brown came out with a wonderful article, and it's called, If China Can Fund Infrastructure with Its Own Credit, So Can We. And they're talking, she's talking about how in China, infrastructure is built at virtually zero cost in terms of the money, because the Chinese government owns the majority of its banks, and about 40% of the funding for its giant railway project comes from bonds issued by the Ministry of the Railway. 10 to 20% comes from provincial and local governments, and the remaining 40 to 50% is provided by loans from government-owned banks and financial institutions. And like private banks, state-owned banks simply create money as credit on their books. The difference is that they return their profits to the government, making the loans essentially interest-free, and the loans can be rolled over indefinitely. In effect, the Chinese government decides what work it wants done, draws on its own national credit card, pays Chinese workers to do it, and repays the loans with the proceeds. This was the system that the United States started with. It's the system Canada used to have. And it's a system that works. And by the way, next Wednesday, we'll have Ellen Brown on our show to talk about this and other issues of banking, state banking versus private banking. Cisco has announced 1,100 more layoffs. Their business continues to dwindle, which strikes me as odd, because right now I think Cisco would be seeing a need to go back in and reverse engineer some of their routers to make them more secure, because apparently some of these routers are also wide open to some of these ransomwares. And we know the routers are backdoored by the NSA anyway. Bad news all over. Ford's letting people go. We're still seeing these commercials. In fact, not just on TV. I'm getting email pitches for, buying a car, and the prices are amazing. The prices are absolutely amazing. And boy, I could use a new car. Newer. But nobody has any money, and that's the big, ugly, dark secret nobody wants to look at. Working and middle-class people do not have any money left to pour back into the system and keep it going. All righty, let's see. We're going to talk to Linda in Massachusetts. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I hate to ask you to repeat something, but the female caller before me, and you were talking about somebody going to purge the Trump supporters out of the White House or something. I didn't quite follow it.
Okay, well, basically what it is some of the White House staff were hired on short-term contracts as part of the transition, and their contracts are due to expire on the 22nd. And so this director of personnel inside the White House apparently is following a policy of not allowing Trump supporters to get jobs in the White House. He has been bringing in people opposed to Trump and literally building an anti-Trump staff around the president in order to paralyze and hamstring him. And apparently on this purge, he's not going to renew any of these contracts held by Trump supporters. And he's going to replace them. Again, they're literally creating a White House staff around him that is hostile to everything the president is doing. It is a coup d'etat. It's a palace revolt.
Yeah, it is.
It's a palace revolt.
It's obviously a coup d'etat. Mike, what is this gentleman's position in the White House?
He's director of personnel. His name is DiStefano, and his
DiStefano. Okay.
Yeah, he's the director of personnel. And again, Trump made a big mistake allowing some of these Obama holdovers to stay on, because Trump comes from the world of business, and in the world of business, when you are signing somebody's paycheck, you basically can assume safely their primary loyalty is to you, but that's not how Washington, D.C. works. And even all the way back when Trump was first starting to run, and Governor Chris Christie was trying to surround him with all of these neocons, and then he brought in Reince Priebus to be the White House chief of staff, and Priebus is just bringing in the GOP old guard. And Trump is simply outnumbered, and they've got him running around in circles with all this nonsense about Russiagate, and he's paralyzed. He can't function. He can't implement his agenda, which will be seen by the general population as a failure.
His deficit is his non-political experience, not being a political animal. Something that drives me crazy. Do you mind if I mention something else with the Seth Rich and the original Russia collusion story?
Sure.
It's been bothering me from the beginning that the release date of the WikiLeaks was prior to the Democrat National Convention, which, if the media had carried it at all, would have boosted Bernie's chances.
Yes.
To change some of the delegates. So the theory that we're having we're going to spend millions and millions of dollars, and all these people are going to get their names in the papers and all this recognition, and the theory is broken. It doesn't make sense that Russia would try to help Bernie Sanders beat Hillary Clinton. It makes no sense.
The story doesn't make sense anyway. First of all, it's the United States that has a history of going on out and interfering with other nations' elections, at least 81 times that we know of, and there's probably more beyond that. And second, all of the election fraud that was actually found favored Hillary Clinton. And yet the story we're getting is Russia tampered with our election to get Donald Trump elected. It really doesn't make sense. But they're just screaming it at everybody from all the corporate media in the hopes that people would just say, all right, I'll stop thinking for myself, stop screaming at me.
It's also a theory that was presented by our intelligence services that there's no substance to the theory. It makes no sense.
No, it makes no sense. And even the leaked emails from within the Hillary campaign are saying they came up with this Russia influenced the election after Hillary lost. They just said, we're going to blame it on Russia. Let's go after Russia. Russia bad, Russia bad. And very obviously within our entire government, there is an attempt to demonize Russia and bring back a new Cold War in order to soak the American people for money, for more weapons and bombs and bullets and everything like the old Cold War.
So the blaming Russia thing gives them, two big bonuses. One is to keep the Russia demonization, theme going, and two is to completely deflect the crimes that were exposed by the DNC and Hillary.
Exactly.
Just deflect everything off of Hillary and keep their warmongering marching on.
I'm forgetting who it was. There was somebody in the corporate media, one of the talking heads, actually came out and said, if you actually read those DNC emails, you're helping Russia. And that's how afraid they were that people were going to read them. But enough people did read them and just saw. Bernie Sanders got robbed. He got robbed of the nomination. Right. The DNC basically said, we're going to give it to Hillary Clinton. We don't care what the rank-and-file Democratic voters want. We have already decided it will be Hillary Clinton, and she will power on through into the White House. Only they came up short on the election fraud.
Maybe Russia wanted Bernie to be the president because he's a socialist. That must have been it.
Well,
they did. I'm kidding, Mike.
Yeah, there's no evidence that Russia did anything in our election.
Right. I get that.
Yeah.
But so the theory that Russia and Trump colluded to help Bernie makes no sense. The theory that we're going to spend millions of dollars to investigate. There's nothing there, and there has never been anything there.
This is not an investigation. This is political theater. That's what's going on right now all over the TVs. It's political theater. Oh, yeah, the mere suspicion that this happened is grounds to remove Donald Trump. It is a witch hunt. It's a smear job. It's McCarthyism all over again. And it could just spin dangerously out of control. All right. Well, listen, Linda, thank you very much. We're going to start with Mike in Arizona. I'm probably going to have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Yes, I'd like to say yesterday was the 30th anniversary of the attack on the USS Stark that killed 37 Navy personnel in the Persian Gulf. And, it's just unfortunate in a lot of the Patriot or parrot radios with the networks and the hosts that all of a sudden all they want to do is talk about Seth Ridge and Robert Mueller and Russian hacking and just the same thing. It doesn't matter what network, who you're listening to or whatever is going on. That seems to be all we hear. But nobody took 30 seconds out of their busy day yesterday to remind us that 37 Navy personnel were vaporized on the USS Stark. And it's just a sad commentary in today's world that we can just sit here and talk over and over again about stuff that they've already admitted didn't exist.
Okay, we're going to have to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And during the commercial break, I'm reading the Wikipedia article on the USS Stark incident, where apparently during the Iran-Iraq war, the Stark was patrolling an exclusionary area there in the Persian Gulf and was attacked with 2 Exocet missiles from an Iraqi aircraft. And it doesn't really say whether it was intentional or mistaken identity. But what's really interesting is apparently Ronald Reagan tried to imply that Iran was to blame for the attack. Iraq's our friend. Iraq would never. And so a little more skullduggery on that. Okay, back to the phones. Andrea in Oklahoma. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes. There's a saying that you usually use that if my vote didn't count, then I don't owe this government anything. If it's been stolen away from me, if I found that this government hasn't allowed me to vote the way for who I have chosen to be president, and that they don't recognize me, then I don't have to recognize that this is a legitimate government, and then I don't have to pay the taxes, and I don't have to do anything. And yes, our governor here in Oklahoma has said we can't get out and demonstrate. There's huge fines now if we do. But this is definitely something where we've got to do something about taking our government back. This is ridiculous. And all these things where they make up these new rules or change these ideas that there is no constitution, you don't have any rights anymore, and somebody else is going to make decisions, that is just outrageous.
I agree.
And yes, we are all shaking our hands and saying, I'm mad as you know what, and I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm not going to just sit here but I want to go somewhere it's going to mean something. I mean, people in mass holding up signs and stopping traffic and getting in the way and shutting down this government. We've got to take back our government, and to heck with what they're saying, and for sure, we've got to get with it. I mean, I know that you're wanting to wait till it falls apart, but it just seems like it's grinding on and on and on, and it's like, we got to stop it now almost.
I understand your anger. I hear so much of it. I get so much of it in my email. I hear the anger is out there, and it is definitely growing. We're seeing a lot of road rage here where we live. The fact that there are people in the streets clashing with each other, it does feel like the entire nation is within a hair's breadth of a complete societal breakdown, rioting in the streets, civil war, revolution. And again, I don't want to see it, but at this point I have to concede it could very well happen, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. But again, revolution against the government gives them the justification to declare national emergency, toss what's left of the Constitution into the shredder, and declare a new tyrannical Fourth Reich. Anyway, listen, Andrea, thanks a lot for the call. We're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And before we get back to the phone calls, some of our alert listeners have sent in emails. There are, in fact, commemorations for the USS Stark taking place at various points. I just put up one of them at the website here. All right, let's go back to the phones. Lenny in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I just want to say that, we as Americans have no excuse for not understanding what's happening to us. After all, we did have a country called Germany that went through all of this and was used as a hammer to beat down other countries. Okay, so it's not like we haven't seen it before. And the way I see it is we have a choice. Okay, because I'm looking at America, and it's supposed to be the land of the free and home of the brave. I can honestly say I don't think we are free, and from what I'm looking at, we sure as hell ain't brave. All right, okay. So here's the way and just let me finish if you don't mind. Either we stop this, or we're going to go the way of Germany, and when this country loses the world war to China, Japan, Iran, Russia, okay, and North Korea, because I see Russia now is helping North Korea, okay, when we lose, just like the Germans, we as a nation are going to be put on trial, okay, and frankly, I think it's about the only way the evildoers that are running this country are going to get their comeuppance. Now, and that divine fleet that you often speak of, when we do lose, when this country does lose, it's just going to think it's divine right to leap from the back of the dying dog onto the back of the winning dog and keep on with his way. Just like the movie The Thing, it'll just morph into the organism that's still living and become part of it.
Well, that's a good metaphor for what's going on. And yeah, my concern is that our government is engaging in many of the same crimes that Nazi Germany did: concentration camps, use of torture, demonization of a targeted group as a scapegoat mechanism, starting wars with outright lies and deceptions and fraud. And I'm afraid that when we lose this war, and I think we will, future generations of Americans are going to be forced to share the collective guilt for events that happened before they were even born. Just like the people of Germany to this very day, who were born after World War II is over, and they're indoctrinated in their schools to feel guilty about what the Nazis did and all this other stuff that was going on, even though they were not there at the time. And I really don't want to see future Americans have to go through that.
Now, like you, I don't have any children, and like you, it's been one of my biggest regrets in life. But like you, I thank God at this time I don't have any children. because I don't want them coming up under such guilt and oppression that they had nothing to do with. But you can see it's the same card being played over and over and over again. It's not like we don't know what's happening, okay? Stop blaming the German for what they did unless we're willing to stand up and stop what we're doing.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. I would agree with you on that one. The reality is right now, unfortunately, in this new world war, the United States are the baddies. And that it's obvious. Anybody who objectively looks at the military dispersal around the world of U.S. weapons of war, it's obvious that the United States government are the aggressors here. And the corporate media's job is to convince you that, oh, we have to go over and bomb these people. It's humanitarian. We have to invade this country. We must bring them democracy. We have to, and endless series of lies. Saddam's nuclear weapons, Assad's sarin gas, and so forth and so on.
Yeah, and Susan Rice, Libya's Muammar Gaddafi using what's the purple pill? What's it called? What's that pill called for erectile dysfunction?
Viagra.
What do you call it? Viagra. Yes, said that he was using Viagra to rape all the women in this country. Okay, look, these people need to be brought to justice. If we don't do it, I'm telling you, the Americans are going to be in the same position that the Germans were. And you're going to have everything taken from you anyway. So, and let me just say this pertaining to bullies. They don't stop unless you stop them, period.
I hear you. I hear you. All right, well, listen, thank you very much for the phone call, Lenny. You've made some very, very good points. And we're going to switch over to Mo in Florida. Aloha, Mo. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Michael. Thank you for taking my call. I had a little computer problem, or I don't know, was somebody screwing up with your site? And so if you've already discussed this, and you can let me know. But I was just thinking, this thing with Lieberman actually, felt like somebody kicked me in the stomach, and I shouldn't even care anymore because you can just see it's Netanyahu's just sitting there laughing his head off at the stupid Americans that are used like foolish tools, But I was thinking, who did Trump just meet with a couple days ago? Henry Kissinger. I can just see this right now. I can hear it. You will hire a Lieberman for the FBI, and you'll be okay. And that's what I think happened.
Well, you're raising a very good point that the threat of impeachment and making a big stink over Russiagate may be what's being used to coerce Donald Trump to go along with some of these things like Lieberman is head of the FBI. And once Lieberman gets confirmed, all of a sudden they'll say, oh, well, there wasn't really, they were right, there was no evidence of Russian collusion and it all goes away. But that may be what's really going on, is they're convincing Donald Trump they could actually take him out of office, even though it's all a lie, in order to get Donald Trump to make some choices and decisions that serve the deep state.
Why don't they just call Netanyahu and just make him the president, so at least we know who's in charge?
Well, Netanyahu wasn't born in this country. He doesn't qualify into the Constitution any more than Ted Cruz did.
No, change the Constitution.
Well, there's not much point in that. They're just ignoring it as it is.
Yeah. Well, like Cynthia McKinney said, she had to take the pledge. And I call it the Ziocons, the Zionists and the neocons they're just, that old saying, when you're up to your neck in alligators, you forget that your main objective was to drain the swamp. Is that appropriate or what?
It's very appropriate. Unfortunately, Donald Trump is up to his hair in alligators right now, and they do not like him.
Michael, I love you. Keep doing the good work. I don't know how you do it every day. I got to take a break, and you're on the front lines here, bro, and everybody appreciates it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
It does get tiring. It's very frustrating. I'm thinking back to when Trump won the election and how good we all felt. And now all of a sudden it's been disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. And now here we are with the national security state basically getting ready to tell the American voter what you want doesn't matter anymore. We're going to get rid of the president you wanted and replace him with a president that we want. And you might as well just sit down and get used to that idea. We're going to do a quick shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. Let's see, where are you? Steve in California. Steve, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I have to agree with you. Reversing the vote of the people is the possibility of actually creating a civil war. I agree with that comment.
Yeah.
But what I called on was the Seth Rich deal. We know that in independent media that this was not a botched robbery. This was a hit. This is sending a message to other potential whistleblowers who might come forward against Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton.
Well, that's what Podesta said in that email. Yeah, I'm all in favor of making an example against a leaker, even if we have nothing to base it on.
Right. Well, my question is, though, I think maybe not only we know that's to be true, and they're looking at that now. I'm not sure even mainstream media is looking at that because I don't really look at mainstream media too much. But let's also look at Gary Webb in the past. Judge Scalia, that was definitely very suspicious there. And Michael Hastings, of course, that one definitely was. But, who controls the investigation also controls the evidence or exclusion of evidence, and that Michael Hastings one smells rotten to the core.
It does. Well, the reason the corporate media is ignoring the new evidence about Seth Rich, including the fact that his doctor said the wounds should not have been fatal, that he was conscious and aware when he went to the hospital, is because they don't want to get anywhere near the idea that he was actually the leak from the DNC to WikiLeaks, because that undermines this constant mantra of Russia hacked the DNC, Russia hacked the election, Russia, 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 Russia. And even, again, Maxine Waters said there's no evidence for any of this, but we're just convinced it must be true. And we don't have any evidence now, but the boys in the back room are faking it up right now as I speak.
Yeah, using probably Vault 7 to do so. Leave the tracks, sure.
Yes. Well, no, that's the CIA's... I forget the name of the group, the one that can leave digital fingerprints. But yeah, if at first you don't succeed, fake the evidence. And we've seen that happen before, too. We saw it, John F. Kennedy assassination. We saw it with the Oklahoma City bombing. We saw it with all of these government cover-ups. There's always fakery going on. Remember the first war in Iraq, they had that yellow cake document that turned out to be a forgery.
I remember that.
Yep.
Hey, thanks again, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Steve in Michigan. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I know you have an account on Scene.life.
Yes.
And their parent company is called Temporal Media.
Yes.
Have you ever looked into them?
No, I haven't.
Their company is registered in California and Delaware, and I posted a bunch of their links on my account on Scene.life. And about 5 minutes after I posted those, they were removed.
Now, that's odd. I've never seen that behavior. Everything that I posted up at Scene Life remained there. I don't spend that much time there because just prepping for the radio show and taking care of the website and fighting off the hackers is pretty much a full-time job. I'm at this 12 to 14 hours a day.
Oh, okay. Well, it seems some of their subsidiaries are defense industry.
Oh, really? Now, that's enlightening.
Yes. They're registered in California and Delaware. Did a little research and found them, and post disappeared within 5 minutes.
Okay, well, that'll be worth conducting an experiment on.
Yeah, I just wanted to pass that on.
All right, well, thanks an awful lot for the information. We're going to let you go here. Now, getting on to immigration, refugees, and so forth. Very interesting article came out of Breitbart. Apparently, one of the open borders organizations funded by George Soros is pushing municipalities to offer identification documents for illegal immigrants, but then requesting they seal all of this data from the immigration authorities. This is a Title VIII violation right there. Aiding and abetting illegal immigrants. This is Soros people saying, please give identification documents to illegal immigrants who are not entitled to have them so that they can walk around and pretend that they belong here, and then you're not allowed to tell immigration authorities that these documents were issued. That's basically what they're saying. Now, ICE is arresting more than 400 immigrants a day, 41,100 in the first 100 days. And the good news is they're starting to round up some of these MS-13 gang members. They did 50 raids across Los Angeles County, and they swept them up. This is a very dangerous gang, MS-13. A lot of them came across those open borders, and even worse, they're starting to recruit American kids into these gangs. And it's easy to recruit these kids in these hard economic times, because MS-13's got a lot of money from its various activities. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Richard in New York, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, good afternoon, Mike. I heard you discussing the anniversary of the USS Stark incident. And I kept a diary. I was a Marine with the 26th Marine Amphibious Unit, Special Operations Capable. I was aboard the USS Nashville at the time of that attack, and I kept a journal through that entire deployment. I was wondering if you'd be interested in my reading my entries for that date.
Yeah, if it's not going to take too much time, please go ahead.
Probably a couple of minutes. You can stop me anytime. I'll try to read it as quickly as I can. The date is 18 May 1987, 0530. Awoke to excited talk of a U.S. ship in the Persian Gulf being hit amidships by 2 Exocet missiles from aircraft, one of which was shot down. Unconfirmed reports say a distress signal was received by a guided missile cruiser, and the attackers were Iranians.
Now,
for camp to camp.
Now
yeah, right.
Okay, so this looks like this was supposed to be a false flag, because Reagan said it was Iran, but it later came on out it was Iraq that had done it.
Exactly, and I found that out later, but this is right from my diary, which I took aboard that ship. Okay, and it says, we thought that we were probably going to be in Marine Operational Deployment Lock, which we were later on. But the entry goes, reports up until 1300 say the USS Stark, FG-31, took 2 hits in the magazine, 1 in the cargo bay, which did not explode, and 3 dead, 30 missing, listing 13 degrees to port. Phalanx down 1 of 2 aircraft, either failure to track or manual committed or timing led to the Sea Whiz not downing the second missiles, which were fired simultaneously at 25 miles away or more. 2 ships are alongside the Stark to pick up survivors, and the Nimitz and Kitty Hawk are steaming to the Gulf of Persia. We are offloading in Toulon, but rumors still go about Modlock, possible U.S. action taken, if any, toward Iraq. The incident happened at night, and COM indicated that the ships were not recognized as foe. Damned if we do, damned if we don't, they say, and I'm sure when America hears, they will be pissed off at finding one of their frigates just about sunk after being blown to hell by yet another third world, whatever. The intelligence of, the captain spoke to us with a late night report, 28 killed, 21 missing, supposedly an accident, no retaliatory action planned. That's it. That was my journal for that day.
Interestingly enough, in the Wikipedia article, they were saying the reason the Sea Whiz did not engage the incoming threat is it was in the wrong mode. It was powered up, but it wasn't on automatic. And apparently that was a miscommunication between the captain and the crew manning the Sea Whiz, for which apparently the captain was actually chastised after it was all over for failing to take proper precautions with his command. So,
just from me, this record that I have kept for years since then is at odds with the true story of what happened. You can see how what we were being told was not necessarily the truth at the time it was actually happening.
Okay.
That's all I got for you, Mike.
Well, all of history is a joke played by the victor on the vanquished in front of an audience too scared to laugh. Thank you very much for the phone call. Well, did you have something else?
Oh, yeah. At least I was there, and I could be able to write about it.
All right. Well, thank you for the personal memoir and first-person account, because that's always going to be more reliable, I think. Thank you very much. Whoa, there we go. That was loud. Now, getting on back to Europe, Nigel Farage is beginning to really stand up against the EU, and he's chastising Brussels for having effectively crushed Greece's democracy under the weight of all the debt. Now, forget about democracy anymore. You are now our slaves because you owe us all this money. And Nigel Farage is out there saying that any attempt by Brussels to destroy Great Britain's sovereignty is going to be met with opposition. Interestingly enough, an Irish member of the European Parliament has torn into the EU Commissioner for the spiteful approach to the Brexit talks. And basically saying, this Mr. Flanagan was saying that you've got to treat these negotiations seriously. And apparently the problem is that the Commission is saying they're not going to be spending any more than 30 minutes per week on the negotiations, and Brexit will never be a success. So it's going to be a fight. I think Britain just ought to go for a hard Brexit. Just put doors on the tunnel, stop the traffic, just cut off all the... and go. There's nothing stopping them from going. If Brussels isn't going to play by the rules, Great Britain is not obligated to play by the rules. It's that simple. Just cut the apron strings and go. Meanwhile, well, actually, we're going to save this until after we get back from these words from our sponsor. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And apparently Donald Trump is out there saying that because the FBI investigation into Michael Flynn did not find anything, that he is seriously considering asking Michael Flynn to come back to the White House. I think that would be a good thing. Anyway, getting on back to Europe. The European Union is preparing to unleash what they call the nuclear option on Hungary. And Brussels is saying they're losing patience with Orban, with this talk about fortifying their borders against the refugees. You know, we have a quota. You will take this many refugees or we will give you what for. And more member states of the European Union are saying, actually, no. In fact, over in Poland, their interior minister is saying the refugees are causing much more damage than we would get from the EU sanctions. So we're just going to let the EU sanction us. And interestingly enough, Germany, which is sort of the champion of this open border ideas, is actually going to have border controls during July's G20 summit. They want to make sure that certain people are not allowed to get near the G20, and so they're actually going to have border controls. Now, the political correctness has reached an insane degree in this country. And apparently, over at the American University in Washington, D.C., they have set up an area called The Bridge. Apparently this opened a couple of months ago. It's a place for people to gather, study, and even sing on open mic nights. But apparently with the blessing of school administrators, this is now a safe space for the multicultural campus. In other words, white students are not allowed. And everybody seems to be okay with this. Now, can you imagine if somebody set up on a campus some kind of a little social meeting area, and they put a sign out front saying, no blacks allowed, or no Hispanics allowed, or no gays allowed? Oh my, headline news. But this American University in Washington, D.C., with the blessings of the school administrators, have set up this little social meeting area for the multicultural students in which they're saying whites cannot come on in. It's still racist. And you do not cure racism by being racist. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Time and again we're seeing all of these attacks on white people as a culture, and it's being treated as if, oh yeah, this is okay. In fact, it's long overdue because of slavery. Well, I've never owned a slave. And none of you have ever been a slave other than to that 1040 form. And no, my ancestors did not own slaves. In fact, my ancestors ran a station on the Underground Railroad. So why all of a sudden has it become socially acceptable to go back to segregation, which is what this is? Segregation. You white people go over there. That's where you belong. And people are okay with this? This is insane. And this is what our universities are teaching kids. which may explain why these kids are coming out of these universities saddled with tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt and unable to find a job. Most of these kids coming out of the universities do not have the skills to compete in a job market, and they're not prepared to deal with the real world. They're expecting the real world is going to be just as controlled and soft and fluffy and Play-Doh and bubbles as the university was, and that's simply not real. It's ridiculous. Now then, Chelsea Manning finally is out of prison. She's been there for 7 years, and she says she's looking forward, doesn't want to look back at the past and what happened. And, of course, Chelsea Manning was one of the early whistleblowers through WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks normally tries to protect their sources. In this case, Bradley Manning at the time was identified and basically had leaked camera footage from aircraft showing the commission of war crimes. And the pilots who committed the war crimes, nothing happened to them. Chelsea Manning, prison. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I want to step on back to that horrible tragedy in Times Square, New York, earlier today, where this 26-year-old guy, Richard Rojas, was fleeing a robbery when he crashed. Now, at the time they arrested him, they didn't realize he was fleeing a robbery. And they were looking at his police record. He had prior DUIs, and so they just assumed he was driving drunk, but then he blew a 0.0 on the blood oxygen meter, and apparently the drug scan has come back preliminary. He wasn't on drugs. And so now they're saying maybe the guy was trying to commit suicide by police officer. Well, you don't need to take out a bunch of pedestrians to do that. Just go up to a police officer and put your hands in the sky. Remember, we were talking just the other day about Tulsa police officer Betty Shelby, who had shot and killed a man that witnesses said presented no threat. He did not have a gun. No gun was in the vehicle. He was standing well away from her with his hands up, and she simply opened fire on him, insisting that there was something about his demeanor that made her fear for her life. And it must have worked. She's been found not guilty of first-degree manslaughter. They just let her walk. Now, off on a little bit of a tangent, but I thought this story was really kind of fun. Most of us tend to think of royalty as very expensive national decorations, not really worth much of anything at all. But apparently, over at the Royal Dutch Airlines, KLM, apparently there's a little bit of royal there, because King William Alexander, for the last 21 years, has flown twice a month as a commercial airline co-pilot for KLM's City Hopper subsidiary. Apparently he loves flying, and apparently when he's in his co-pilot's uniform, nobody recognizes he's the king of the entire country. And they just go on out. I think that's really cool when royalty does something nice like that. Of course, if you remember, following the end of World War II, and Emperor Hirohito was allowed to remain Emperor of Japan, and obviously he didn't have any administrative duties because there was a U.S. Imposed government there, but he was still a figurehead. He actually turned to botany. And by the time he passed away, he'd actually become a very famous botanist. Done a lot of really good work. Okay, now then, let's talk about the world of computers and hacking. We mentioned this briefly before, but there is another malware that is out there using this NSA code, the same one in the WannaCry. This one is almost impossible to detect because this one is operating a cryptocurrency mining operation. It's turning your computer into a cryptocurrency miner for the perpetrators. And it's spread all over the place. Apparently, now that they're looking for it, they have found that it is spread a lot further than the WannaCry did, because WannaCry was making such a nuisance of itself. Everybody said, oh, okay, we got to get on in. There was that 22-year-old in London who found the kill switch and activated it, and there's a new version of that one out. But we're going to see more of this. We're going to see more cybercrime and mischief on the basis of these NSA tools. And there's a story over at shtfplan.com. Brandon Smith is warning that all global banking systems and stock exchanges are open to attack with these NSA exploits. And it is a real problem. They could literally take a bank down. As that caller earlier in the day said, yeah, we keep hearing stories about how all of a sudden ATMs stop working. And it would make more sense that you have your cash under your control so that you are not left hungry and helpless when the ATMs go down. And it seems almost criminally reckless to be pushing for a cashless society to make us dependent on all these banking computer systems at the same time the NSA has made it possible for criminals to take these systems down. Another article over in Zero Hedge saying that these exploits could be used to trigger a stock market crash. And remember how we were talking about the possibility of a virtual 911? And I was thinking maybe WannaCry might be the beginning of it. And that would be where the U.S. government intentionally takes down the internet and the banking systems and blames some of the country for it. Remember, the CIA has that hacking group that is skilled at leaving digital fingerprints to frame third parties for the CIA's hacking. We know that that's an established technology. It came out in the Vault 7 leaks. So they could crash the banking system and say, oh my goodness, now we're in trouble. And it's all the fault of those Iranian, North Korean, Russian, whoever else it is we want to bomb this next week. And so it is a reality. In the name of national security, the NSA and the CIA have in fact made the world's IT infrastructure on which we are all so dependent fragile, delicate, vulnerable, wide open. Now, up in Oregon, there's a company called Panic Incorporated, and they develop a number of games and utilities for both Mac OS and iOS. And apparently, they fell victim to malware. The founder of the company, Stephen Frank, fell victim to a poisoned download of the Handbrake video transcoder. And I was saying just the other day, when you are downloading a patch, an update, this or that, go to the original issuing company. There's a lot of websites around there that say, we have all the drivers stored up here. We have all the out-of-date patches for all your old software and this and that. And very often you will find they are infected with malware. And I've had a couple of these things happen to me as well from these. We will update your drivers automatically. So this Handbrake video transcoder planted a back door that allowed hackers to basically break on in and steal the source code for all these companies' products. And that means free versions, probably with malware in them, will be released online, and this company may well be put out of business. Now, apparently Dell's latest BIOS update is bricking some machines. People have put in this BIOS update, and they go to reboot, and they get the power light on, and nothing else happens. And obviously, frustrated users are loading up the support channel over at Dell down in Texas. And unfortunately, the support people there aren't being very helpful. Their party line is, well, the updates Dell releases don't affect the system, but it would enhance the performance of the system. No, the system isn't working at all, and Dell better do something about getting these people's machines back up and running, and that may be very difficult. Depending upon what they did with the BIOS, the machines may be irretrievable, in which case Dell ought to replace them. One of the problems that has really hit the computer software industry, in fact, the hardware industry, is they'll go ahead and release products that are still defective. These companies let go of their own quality assurance staff. They'll have a few people to test the alpha. Then they'll put the beta out as a saleable product and wait for you, the end user, to identify the problems and complain about them. It saves them a lot of money, but it turns all of you into uncompensated quality assurance workers for these computer and software companies. Now, as you know, home security is a big deal. As the economy goes down, crime is going on up. And apparently Rapid7 found 10 vulnerabilities in looking at the Comcast Xfinity, ADT, and AT&T digital life systems. And the issues range from a fail-open condition on the external door and window sensors to weak pre-shared Wi-Fi access passwords onto clear text network communications. Just wide open out there. Now, these security systems do not go on to the regular internet, so hackers cannot approach them remotely. But if they're outside with the appropriate hardware of your home, they can hack into the security system and turn it off. Again, the rush is get the product out there and get the money. I remember many years ago, my younger brother Matthew, and he had a Fiat, and he wanted to get a car alarm for it. So we went down to Radio Shack, we got the car alarm, we installed it. It was very, very simple for today. There's a key. Put the key in, you arm it, and take the key away with you. And his car got broken into, and the alarm had not gone off. And what we discovered was, due to a defect in the switch, when you turned the switch to arm the alarm was on. But for some reason, when you took the key back out, the alarm would turn off. There were no indicators whatsoever. When I was a kid, American-made products were looked on as the best in the world, the highest of quality. And the made in Japan was the cheap stuff. Today, American products are junk, overpriced. I saw this eyeglass commercial the other day talking about these mail-order eyeglasses. They're made in Japan, so you know they're top quality. Wow, what a reversal. So let's talk about human-caused global warming. Yes, it is still snowing in the Tennessee Valley. Butte, Montana recorded the coldest May 17th since records began in 1894. Now, the corporate media is already out there hunting down hot temperatures all over the United States. Oh, it's 91 in Massachusetts. Well, we are on the doorway of summer. Should be seeing those. Apparently in Wyoming, they got underneath this huge, huge storm. And a lot of the roads are closed in the state because of the snow. So if you're in Wyoming, check with your roadway advisories before you get on out there, because apparently it's very, very difficult going. Now, the corporate media propaganda notwithstanding, they're trying to build audience for Al Gore's inconvenient sequel, releases this summer when it's hot. Apparently, the latest measurements are showing that the Atlantic Ocean is actually cooling. And as a result, icebergs are traveling further away from the Arctic caps. And what we're seeing is the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation beginning its 30-year cooling phase in the 60-year cycle. And they've had record iceberg sightings all along the Canadian coastline. Remember when the global warming people were saying, snowfalls are now a thing of the past? Huzzah, huzzah. And yes, the corporate media is going to try and convince you the world is roasting, it's terrible, it's warm, and it's all your fault, and you've got to pay carbon taxes. Now, the other day we were talking about this Azure Organic Farms, which is a large-scale organic farm. It sort of undermines the claim by the big factory corporate farms that you can't do organic farming on a large scale, because Azure does, and they got a huge customer base. And their local county government had just come on in and said, we are going to require you to spray your field with glyphosate to deal with weeds and pests, and we have the authority to do it. And it went public on the internet. There was a big, huge outcry. And the good news is the county government backed off, said they will work together with the owners of Azure Organic Farms to deal with the weeds in a way that does not cost them their organic certification. So that's a little bit of a victory there. Now then, we've been talking about the declining quality of water in the United States, places like Flint, Michigan. And it's all driven by the decline in the infrastructure, which is rotting away. There's no money to repair it, keep it clean. Flint, Michigan their water was contaminated. Pure economics. They didn't want to pay the water bill, so they disconnected from another city's water system and just plunked the hose into the Flint River. And that, of course, had some contamination in there. But it's not just the city water systems. We mentioned this earlier in the week. There's a huge problem with toxic runoff from U.S. military bases. Those U.S. military bases are some of the worst polluters on Earth. And so now, over at Fairchild Air Force Base, residents living near that base have been told, do not drink the tap water. Do not use it for cooking. Apparently, the Airway Heights water supply is contaminated with chemicals from the Fairchild Air Force Base just west of Spokane, Washington. Now, they're working to flush out and clean the water system. But why is this happening in the first place? Why are these... We're always being told, pick up your trash, don't pollute, take care of the environment, and yet military bases seem to be exempt. Now, down in California, in San Diego County, as you know, some time ago, there was a big problem with the San Onofre nuclear power plant. There had been an attempt to get more money out of it by putting in these larger heat exchangers. Now, they got past the Nuclear Regulatory Agency by saying it was just maintenance and replacement, but they actually put in some larger heat exchangers, and they cut corners on the materials used in them, which resulted in rapid corrosion followed by a leak, and the entire San Onofre power plant has now been shut down. The plant was fully closed in 2013. The problem is, where do they put the radioactive waste? And they want to just put it in these storage drums like they have at Fukushima on the Pacific coast within 100 feet of the ocean. And obviously the citizens in that area are very, very concerned about it. Concerned about leaks, concerned about possible tsunami. That's a problem here. Okay, over in North Carolina, Congresswoman Virginia Foxx is proposing a new bill, H.R. 1313, which will require you to have all of the government's recommended vaccinations and a DNA test in order to be employed in that state. If you don't have all your vaccinations, you will lose your job. Sig Heil, Sig Heil, Sig Heil. Meanwhile, if vaccines are 100% safe and harm no one, then why did the U.S. government's Vaccine Injury Court pay out over $3 billion in awards to thousands of families damaged by these vaccines? We are living under absolute fascism. If it's good for the corporations, we're going to do it. If it's bad for the people, who cares? Making money is good. Making money is good. Things that don't make money, those. All right, we're coming up here on our last commercial of the day. And when we come on back, got a little announcement about John Stadmiller's show. You're going to want to stay tuned after this show is over. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, final segment of our program today. And I wanted to give you the heads up on John Stadmiller's show, which is immediately following this one. Gerald Celente is going to be his guest right at the top of the show. So don't touch that dial and stay tuned, and there's going to be some interesting discussions there. Apparently, 2 U.S. senators have introduced a bill to Congress. It's called the Patch Act, the Protecting Our Ability to Counter Hacking Act. And what it plans to do is to set up a department in the Department of Homeland Security. And all of these spy agencies who are finding these backdoors and code exploits to break into computers will be required to send them to this office, who will then decide if the exploit is serious enough where it should be made available to the manufacturers immediately instead of being hoarded. It's a step in the right direction, I think. And I hope the bill definitely passes on that one. Other news coming on up. Apparently an ex-Secret Service officer just got 20 years for sexting teens from the White House. Come on, people. Is this the best that we can get to work in the government? Anthony Weiner, the Secret Service agent. What is wrong with these people? Is there something in the water? Are they all on prescription antidepressants? It's amazing. All righty. Now then, remember the other day we were talking about how Pope Francis had acknowledged there was a 2,000 case backlog in dealing with pedophile priests within the Catholic Church, and it was just going to take a long, long time to deal with all the cases. Well, he found a shortcut. He's just granted them all absolution, saying no arrests are necessary. We're just going to shove the paperwork through. It's over and done with. They're absolved. Go forth and sin no more. We hope. SpaceX completed its 6th successful launch in just 4 months. They were not able to return the rocket because the payload was too heavy. But they're definitely getting up there, and good for SpaceX. And I understand it's come at a bit of a price. Apparently, SpaceX works their employees very, very long hours, apparently without compensation, and now there's a bit of a stink about that. But I remember when I worked at NASA, the idea that you were working an 8-hour day, that was ridiculous. That was ridiculous. You had problems to solve. You didn't get to go home until the problem was solved. Now, let's see. One more. More about that crazed Times Square driver wanted suicide by cop. I'm wondering if he was on prescription antidepressants. Interesting. Apparently up in Alaska, 2 volcanoes, the Bogoslav, which has been on and off for the last few months, and the Cleveland volcano, have both erupted within a few hours of each other. So it looks like the ring of fire is starting to really ring up there in the Aleutians, which of course can cause problems here in Hawaii from tsunamis. So we're going to keep a look on that. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. We will be back here tomorrow, Friday, with the lovely Lady Claire. Until then, please share what you learn here with everybody that you know. And we'll be back tomorrow. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller and Gerald Salente. And Aloha, America.